everyone, welcome to another episode of Twisted Talks. I'm Josh.
I'm Tanya.
And this week, our Twisted Talk will be presented and, articulated is what I'm going to throw in there. We're getting bougie. By Tanya, by our in-house murder enthusiast.
Murder enthusiast.
Murder.
Murder.
But actually, I don't know, does this one involve murder?
Not technically.
I'm intrigued even more now. Maybe in a roundabout way.
Yeah.
We'll see. Anyway,
so
with that said,
lads and ladies, today I am going to be telling you the story of Georgia Tann and her adoption home.
I'm actually quite excited because I've never heard any of this before, I don't think, ever.
Well, let me tell you then. Let me break it down.
Well, as excited as I can be about other people's misfortune.
Yeah. Which I imagine is very excited because you're a misery. I'm joking.
Oh my god, you know what? I'm going back over every episode, editing you out and re-uploading it.
Hello, welcome to Twisted Talks. I'm Josh. There is no one else.
Yeah, it is I and me and personality number 3.
So, Beulah George Tann, known better and more widely as Georgia, was born in 1891. I have seen some sources say that she was...
1891?
Yeah.
I didn't know we were going back that far.
We're going back.
Doctor Who, where's your TARDIS? Oh wait, oh my god, I know this is like so early to be introduced. Look, I'm giddy already.
Go on.
Text me.
Oh,
yeah.
Jesus Christ, okay.
Hang on, make sure we're up volume first before you send it. I have it taken off silent. Yeah, okay.
Hold on. How the fuck did you do that?
I paid 99 cents.
Fun fact, when I first moved into the house, before the electric shower was put in, the pipes, every time I took a shower or tried to take a shower, I had to go to my dad's house to shower.
I remember.
The pipes would sound like the TARDIS taking off. But anyway.
And that's that on why the shower couldn't be used.
Yeah, and also because it was one of those showers that works off the immersion and you had to try and balance the water, and there was no balancing this shit. It was either scalding hot or freezing cold. There was no...
You were either in the depths of hell with Lil Nas X sliding down the pole, or you were in Antarctica with penguins from Madagascar.
Yeah.
Range.
The house has range. So I've seen some sources say that Georgia was born on July 18th, but I haven't been able to completely verify that.
Okay.
Georgia was born to George Tann, a district judge, and Beulah Yates Tann, a school teacher, which was something considered unusual for the time, as women and mothers in particular rarely worked outside the home. Georgia had a brother, Rob, who was 3 years younger than her. And Georgia's father was considered the most well-educated man in Newton County, apparently.
Imagine to be like...
Yeah. And despite the respect that he garnered as judge of the Mississippi 2nd Chancery District Court, he was not well-liked and had been described...
What's it with you getting the mouthfuls in terms of courts and labs and stuff?
Sorry, I had to put the windows up. It started raining. Yeah, I always do. Like, what was it? The Washington State Laboratory. It was way longer than that even. Way longer than that.
It was like 6 words.
Yeah. So, George's father, George, was considered the most well-educated man in Newton County, apparently, and despite the respect that he garnered as judge of the Mississippi 2nd Chancery District Court, he was not well-liked and has been described as, quote, arrogant, argumentative, and domineering. And it
Another domineering!
Instantly reminded me...
That's 3 episodes in a row now.
Instantly reminded me of a certain someone.
Okay.
Yeah.
Hold a second, bear with.
Okay, we're back. I thought I was being sly by, barely whispering the name of the person, but the microphone is very sensitive.
Yeah, I was like, as soon as I heard it, I was like, I think the microphone might have just about deciphered that one.
And
so
it is.
I was like, I'm going to stop recording and edit that out.
And it is someone that I do think has listened to the podcast, so let's not risk the wrath. Georgia was born and raised in Hickory, Mississippi, and there isn't much information available.
Way to make everyone we know paranoid. Is it me?
It's Courtney. It's Courtney Craven.
You bitch. No, we're joking. We love you. It wasn't you.
No, Courtney's...
We'll tell you in another...
Courtney's
Whenever you hear this and ask us about it, we'll inform you.
Yeah, I'll tell you straight out who it is, hon. So she was born and raised in Hickory, Mississippi. Now, I have seen some sources saying that she was born in Philadelphia, Mississippi.
Okay.
But I don't,
either way, Mississippi.
I'm not good with the geography, and especially of the countries that I don't live in. So
girl, I'm not good with geography in this
with.
country and the size of North America.
Yeah, terrifying. So she is said to have both idolised her father and craved to defy him. So George had very specific aspirations for young Georgia. He envisioned her having a prominent career as a concert pianist. I hope you're enjoying the rain, guys. It's a little bit of ASMR for you.
Yeah. Fuck it. Ireland.
So he had her trained in the piano starting at, I believe, age 5. Georgia actually hated this, but she powered through and she attained a degree in music from Martha Washington College in Abingdon, Virginia in 1913. She taught briefly in Columbus, Mississippi, but apparently did not have the patience for it and left. Meanwhile, what Georgia was really interested in was law. She persuaded her father to tutor her and began taking summer courses at Columbia University. She actually passed the state bar exam in Mississippi as well.
Like the legal?
The bar exam, like what you have to pass to become a practicing lawyer. But this was not seen as an acceptable career for a woman at the time, and so Georgia never actually practiced law. Instead, she went on to become a social worker. Now, social work was a relatively new concept in the early 1900s.
I can imagine, yeah.
And adoption wasn't...
They still don't do it right now.
Yeah, like adoption...
Well, some of them do, obviously. No shade to anyone that is actually good at their job in that work.
Yeah, but we all remember Baby P.
And many, many more.
Yes. And this is probably... Where am I going? And adoption wasn't anywhere near as common as it is today, and this is probably what allowed Georgia to operate in the manner that she did for so long. So Georgia began working for the Kate McWillie Powers Receiving Home.
The what?
No, the Kate McWillie. Like, Josh, I'm telling you, some of these names are unnecessarily long. Like, unnecessary.
No, I'm laughing at the Willie.
Oh, yeah, McWillie. So Georgia began working for the Kate McWillie Powers Receiving Home for Children in Jackson, which was sort of an offshoot of
the Kate McWillie and Jackson?
No, it's the Kate McWillie Powers, that's her name, Kate McWillie Powers.
Okay.
Receiving Home for Children, and it was in Jackson, Mississippi.
Mm-hmm.
Get it out of your system.
No, just keep going. I'm going to save the giddiness for another possibly inappropriate but hopefully appropriate time in the podcast episode.
Okay.
If there is one.
And this was sort of an offshoot of the Mississippi Children's Home Society, but she was later fired for improperly...
No, I need to... Just give me 1 second. We're back.
We're back, and Josh has the humour of a 10-year-old boy. Because the reason he stopped me while I was on a roll was because I said McWillie and then said offshoot.
You laugh just as much as me, though. I'm just the one with the sexually immature brain that came up with it.
Yeah. Georgia was later fired from the Kate McWillie Powers Receiving Home for Children for improperly removing children from homes, particularly homes where the families were living in poverty. But in the majority...
So homes that she thought couldn't do anything about what she was doing.
Mm-hmm. So, in the majority of cases, there were no instances of abuse or severe neglect or anything that would actually warrant the children being removed from the home.
She was just like, I'm going to just take this child. So,
during her time here, Georgia began to formulate her own theories and opinions on the difference between social classes. Okay, so
and people's opinions are always spot on and gospel, always.
So I think you can see where I'm going.
Mm-hmm.
So Georgia viewed the poor or lower class as breeders. That's her word, breeders.
So only good for shooting out the children and the children shouldn't be with them.
Cattle, basically. So she viewed them as breeders who simply were not capable of being adequate parents, while viewing the upper class and wealthy as a, quote, higher type who could rear children well. I would like to interject at this point to say that I cannot excuse these views in the slightest. Regardless of your social class, how much money is in your bank account, or whatever your personal circumstances may be, it has nothing to do with your skills or abilities as a parent. For example, Paris Hilton's parents sent her to Provo Canyon, where she was abused in every way possible. These people are multi-billionaires. And
they made a very bad choice.
And would have been exactly the type of people Georgia Tann would view as potential good parents. Meanwhile, there are people out there who work multiple jobs.
Is the rain actually trying to fight us for the microphone?
Yeah. Meanwhile, there are people out there who work multiple jobs to ensure that their children are loved and have whatever is within their budget to provide. And like, just to clarify, that's not me saying that Paris Hilton's parents didn't love her whatsoever. They're just an example.
And we paused for a second there and the rain has gone, so that is great. Look at the difference in the waves.
Yeah,
because
you'll
of
have to pull this back a bit later when you're editing. But as well, like when you think about a lot of things have come to light in the last couple of years, particularly with celebrities and their parents taking advantage of them. Britney Spears.
Exactly,
that
and
poor woman,
I'm still concerned on that.
Yeah, like that poor woman has been terrorised for years, for 13 years.
Something still seems off right now.
Yeah, and like, fair enough, her parents weren't rich. Like, she's the one who made a name for the family, made a name for herself, got herself successful, you know, got herself what she has in terms of her career and things. But
was she, I can't remember, did she go off and do that of her own accord, or was she one of those children that was pushed towards it by her?
No, I think
by her parents.
I think Britney started on Disney.
Did she?
I think, I could be wrong.
I know her sister was Nickelodeon.
She was Nickelodeon, which I'm nearly finished Jeanette McCurdy's book. That woman, her mother, is a prime example.
Yeah.
A prime example.
I need to read that book. I have it on my phone or my Kindle or something.
Good. I have it on my phone as well. Like, it's insane. It is insane. And like, her mother controlled everything. Single aspect of her existence up until she died. Like, Jeanette was, like, she tells the book, she tells her story starting from childhood.
Yeah.
And how her mother basically, like, she would make them sit down once a year and watch a video of, like, them saying goodbye to her from when they were kids, thinking that she was going to die from her cancer before she went into remission. And then she would shower Jeanette until Jeanette was like 17, 18. She would conduct breast exams and vaginal exams on Jeanette, telling Jeanette that it was her way of making sure that she wasn't going to get cancer. At one point...
And I'm like, that's really inappropriate. Like, maybe that was her legit reason, because she had the fear of God in her from her own cancer, but do not do that.
And then as well, in one part of the book, Jeanette talks about how when she was like 14, 15, 16, her mother was still showering her with her brother, who was also a teenager, and like they couldn't even look at each other, because I wouldn't blame her. Like, can you imagine being in a shower with your brother when you're a teenager because your mother thinks you can't fucking wash yourself? And then like Jeanette had to go on tour for when she was doing music, and her mother, when she came back, her mother said something about, when she came back, she was planning on moving into an apartment on her own to have her own space for the first time ever. And her mother said to her, but who's going to help you wash yourself? And she was like, well, I've managed
while I was on
tour. And then she went to the apartment, her grandparents drove her mother came, and then her mother brought a DVD. This is how manipulative her mother was.
It's not the goodbye video, is it?
No, her mother brought a DVD for them to watch. It was some old movie, and was like, oh, maybe I can stay the night and we can watch it. And she just never fucking left.
She moved herself in.
I
actually, now that you've brought that book up, there's one thing I saw, and I want to read it out, the email that she got from her mother.
So for context, Jeanette was about 18, 19, she was between 18 and 20 years old, and she was given a trip to a hotel in Hawaii as like a wrap gift for, I think it was the last season of iCarly. And she went with her boyfriend at the time, who was a couple of years older than her.
A bit older,
fine,
but
I
don't think there was anything inappropriate about the age difference.
And paparazzi took photos of them paddleboarding out.
And obviously her mother didn't know she was with.
Her mother didn't know. She had told her mother.
Understandably, you wouldn't tell.
She had told her mother that she was with her gay friend Colton, because he was gay. Her mother wouldn't have had an issue.
Yeah.
And her mother sent her a disgusting email in response to these photos, and like posted a letter on one of her fan pages.
Oh, I didn't know that part.
Yeah, she posted a letter on one of her fan pages. Have you got the email there?
I do.
Let me read it.
I'm doing it. I brought it up. Back off,
Fine,
bitch.
sorry, I'm angry.
Back off,
I'm
bitch!
angry. Continue.
I'm going to let you listen and simmer. We might get some extra juicy content out of you afterwards.
Go on.
Okay, so, I am so disappointed in you. You used to be my perfect little angel, but now you were nothing more than a little, all caps, slut.
Yeah.
A floozy, all used up, and to think you wasted on that hideous ogre of a man. I saw the pictures on a website.
Touching his belly.
Yeah. I saw the pictures on a website called TMZ. I saw you rubbing his disgusting hairy stomach.
She went for both of them.
You look pudgier too. It's clear you're eating your guilt. Thinking of you with his ding-dong inside of you makes me sick. First of all, why are you thinking about that?
That made me skit.
Sick. I raised you better than this. What happened to my good little girl? Where did she go, and who is this monster that has replaced her? You're an ugly monster now. I told your brothers about you, and they all said they disown you just like I do. We want nothing to do with you, McCurdy. love Mom, or should I say Deb since I'm no longer your mother.
And then...
P.S.
Yeah.
Send money for a new fridge, ours broke.
Yeah. So Jeanette waited a couple of days and then she got on to her mother and was like, please, can we talk? I'm confident that if you hear me out, everything will be okay. Her mother responded, said whatever she said, and then at the end, another P.S. Don't forget to send money for the fucking fridge. That's not the way she phrased it, but don't forget to send money for the fridge. Like, this is your daughter, she's not your cash cow. And what really, really fucking set me off with that email was her mother taught her to be anorexic. Because Jeanette started getting boobs when she hit puberty, and in the book she describes it as she didn't want to lose her childlike innocence, she didn't want to lose her childlike body because it was helping her get roles. So her mother taught her to restrict her calories and eat basically sweet fuck all to lose weight.
And then the audacity that when she's looking maybe a healthier weight because she's actually eating like a human being.
I do not ever recall Jeanette McCurdy being any bit overweight, any bit pudgy, anything.
Never. Ever.
And then as well, her mother actually caused her to develop OCD from a very young age. But Jeanette was raised Mormon. And they have this thing called...
I didn't know that.
She was raised Mormon. And
because Salt Lake City and Utah is a Mormon state.
So she was raised Mormon, and in the Mormon church... Now, I'm not well versed in Mormon.
I know a few bits since I was there from my friend there telling me about stuff.
How do you say Mormon?
Mormon.
I'm not well versed in the Mormon culture.
Mormon culture, yeah. Mormon like rules or whatever.
Apparently they have this thing called, I think it's called a still small voice or a small quiet voice or something, which is like, I think from my understanding, it's like their version of like God speaking to you.
Okay.
And Jeanette originally thought that the voice of her OCD was her still small voice. And that's just so sad to me. And like her grandfather was the only one that could see she had OCD because he had seen her doing her rituals. And her mother did nothing.
That's ridiculous.
Like, the hatred I have in my heart for this woman. I've never met this woman. Fair enough, my heart goes out to her in terms of her cancer, and it's a horrible way to die. But she was a fucking bitch.
Yeah.
And I don't like to speak ill of the dead, but she was a fucking bitch.
No.
So yeah.
And yeah, I just saw the thing. Ye have heard his voice from time to time, and he hath spoken unto you in a still small voice. But ye were past feeling that ye could not feel his words. If you were not keeping the Lord's commandments, you will not be able to feel or hear the still small voice.
Yeah, and then as well, her mother, like...
Some people refer to it also as one's conscience.
Yeah, but like her mother basically just did everything she could to pander to Dan Schneider. And like get Jeanette her spin-off, which I suppose she got with Sam and Cat. But like there's one excerpt that just sticks with me, which is where like obviously Jeanette held her Mormon beliefs a lot closer to her than her mother did in the end. Now I don't think she's still a practicing Mormon, but you know, it was her faith, it was important to her, it's what she was raised in. And so I think in the Mormon culture there's something against drinking, and then obviously in America...
Yeah, no alcohol, no caffeine. Nothing that will taint your body, basically.
Yeah, and then obviously in America, the legal drinking age is 21.
Yeah.
And she basically went to dinner with Dan Schneider, and he kept trying to plumoss her to drink. But
at that time, she was in her Mormon belief that she didn't want to drink.
She took like one sip to get him off her back.
Just to be like, okay,
and he then, she was 18, got up and started massaging her shoulders.
That's disgusting.
Like, Dan Schneider...
This is turning into a Jeanette McCurdy episode.
Yeah, sorry.
Actually.
Dan Schneider is a freak. So...
I also have no idea where you were.
Oh, yeah. So after being fired, Georgia would move to Texas and participate in...
Where was she? Oh, she got fired from the
in Mississippi.
Classifying them all as fucking her little...
Yeah. So after being fired, Georgia would move to Texas and participate in a Boston marriage, which is where two single independent women would live together. Now this was quite common in like the 1800s, but by the time that Georgia moved in with Anne...
Because this was when was this, the 1900s?
This was in the 1920s.
Okay.
So I think it was in 1920 they moved to Texas, and basically around this time there was like a societal shift in the perception of Boston marriages, and they started to be viewed as more of a homosexual thing, and they were kind of frowned upon.
Okay.
So Georgia would live with Anne Atwood, and there is some speculation that Georgia and Anne were in a relationship, but as
Nothing
I said,
confirmed.
this could be due to the societal
It's
shift.
the standards at the time being like, oh, two women living together, you must be gays.
Yeah.
Or lesbians or whatever term.
So societal
wanna
shift
use.
surrounding Boston marriage at the time, it was becoming less popular and beginning to gain homosexual connotations. Anne had also worked with Georgia in Jackson at the Kate McWillie home. Before Georgia had been fired, and the two moved from Texas to Memphis after a short while of living in Texas.
I love the name Memphis.
Yeah. Not long before they moved to Memphis, Anne became pregnant out of wedlock. She named her son George, but would call him Jack. Anne also added Jack's father's last name of Hollinsworth to her own name in an effort to be seen as a widow rather than an unwed mother.
Okay,
because
that would
the stigma.
The appearance would appear better for her.
Which I probably would have done the same in those times. So in 1922, Georgia adopted her daughter June. June's daughter, Georgia's granddaughter, would go on to say that Georgia wasn't the best mother and was, quote, a cold fish. She said, a cold fish. She said Tann would provide her mother with material things but nothing else, no warmth, love or affection. In 1924, Georgia and Anne arrived in Memphis with Jack and June in tow, and it was here that they set up a makeshift adoption agency in their home. This was the beginning of the Shelby Co Chapter of the Tennessee Children's Home Society, and it was also the beginning of all the atrocities that Georgia Tann would go on to commit.
So we're getting into it now.
So eventually they found a more suitable building at 1556 Poplar Avenue. I really struggled to say that there. And the society, as it became known, is reported to have been supported within the community, and Georgia had many supporters. Eleanor Roosevelt sought her out to get counsel regarding
As in
child welfare.
Eleanor and Teddy Roosevelt,
Yep.
like Theodore.
As in, like, the First Lady, Eleanor Roosevelt, sought out Georgia to get counsel from her regarding child welfare.
Okay.
Which, knowing what I know, having done the research...
Yeah, now that you know
wild. Absolutely wild.
Of all places to go to for advice. I mean, they probably didn't know that at the time. They
Yeah.
thought they were probably reaching out to
Yeah.
a very reliable, educated source.
Oh, she was good at building a facade.
You know,
she was good.
A master manipulator.
Master manipulator is right. So, where was I? Oh yeah, Pearl Buck, who is an author, I think, had asked her to collaborate on a book about adoption, and she had even received a personal invitation to President Truman's inauguration.
This bitch had really wormed her way into every crevice she could.
Like, rubbed elbows with all the elites.
But then again, like, I guess if this is going in the direction of, like, nicking kids, basically,
Yeah, it is.
and giving them to the mightier,
It is.
then she's in the perfect circle. And I'm sorry, but most rich people want what they want and they don't care how they get it.
Yeah.
Not saying all of them, and but a lot of them, like, they're sharks.
Yeah.
And especially, I
Absolutely.
feel like even more so back then.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Like, society didn't
You
have
can't
half as much
get
empathy
that
back
much
then.
power and that much money without being
Corrupt in some way.
or not even without being a shark, like, without being, what's the word, cutthroat.
Cutthroat, yeah, that's the word.
It's very hard to make a very successful business without being cutthroat. And don't get me wrong, there's plenty of people who do it without being cutthroat, and they do it the right way and the
But it is
ethical
harder.
way, but it's the harder way.
Yeah. Which is ridiculous.
Yeah, it should be the other way around. It should be harder to be a snake.
Yeah. So in addition to all of these people, she also had the support of, this is so long again, Shelby County Family Court Judge Camille Kelly and Edward Hull Crump, who was the mayor
Crump.
of Memphis. Yeah, I've also seen him referred to as Boss Crump.
Like, and you know you're going to probably get away with a lot of shit when you have someone from the family court in your pocket.
Yeah. So Edward Crump was the mayor of Memphis at the time, and these two would play a key role in
the whole thing.
Georgia's adoptions. So all seemed well with the society from a distance, and an outsider could be forgiven for having the perspective that Georgia was a saint to society, taking in unwanted, neglected and abused children and placing them with carefully selected, loving families who would give them the life that their birth parents could not or did not want to.
I am sure that's what you have to tell yourself to sleep at night, my dear.
But this was all a carefully curated facade by Georgia, who had used her skills and knowledge as both a social worker and a lawyer to evade detection for years.
Oh yeah, because she did the bar.
26 years, to be precise.
Wait, so she was actively doing it for 26 years before...
26 years.
That's a lot of families.
Yeah, torn apart. Now, in the course of those 26 years...
But even imagine to be one of those people, like, you know, like not only is the family torn apart that the child is gone from, but imagine to be that child and to grow up.
Yeah.
And then if you do get the answers that you're adopted and whatever, and then you do a bit of digging and find out that you were as good as, I'm assuming, kidnapped.
Yep. And that you did have a loving family that wanted nothing more than to keep you. Which, like, that's not me judging people who give their children up for adoption.
No, of course.
You know, there's so many reasons.
But it's in this scenario, they're not necessarily being willingly given up.
It's not the case that the parents didn't want them, or that the parents weren't in a position to keep them and raise them, or that the parents couldn't support them.
It was literally a position of this bitch.
Yeah, this bitch. So... Georgia tore families apart for her own monetary gain. She would steal, kidnap and plumose mothers into giving up their babies.
I love the name, the word plumose.
Yeah. If you don't know, because I don't know if it's like a very Irish thing. I feel like I've only ever heard Irish people say it.
This is true as well, actually.
But like to plumose someone is to kind of... I can't think of the other word. To kind of convince them.
Yeah, it depends on the context. Like...
So, like, you could say, like, oh, he was plumosing me to buy him a drink.
Yeah.
Like, you know, he was trying his best to convince you to buy him a drink, like. So, plumose mothers into giving up their babies so that she could then sell them to rich families under the guise of adoption. She didn't vet or check out any of these families, and as a result, many of these stolen children endured years of abuse at the hands of their new so-called families. So it's fair to say that the society was less of an adoption home and more of a black market child trafficking ring.
Yeah, literally.
So in 1941, the society lost all endorsements from the Child Welfare League of America. After
1991.
1941.
Oh, I thought you said 91. I was like,
No.
Jesus fucking Christ.
No.
Well, I mean, that's still a long time, so it's still Jesus fucking Christ. But...
So the society lost all endorsements from the Child Welfare League of America after it was discovered that Georgia had destroyed most of the paperwork regarding child placements. As a result of this, she had her licence revoked, and Georgia fired back, saying that the adoptions were protected by privacy laws and that she was not in violation of any practices. But the society remained unlicensed under Tennessee law, and by 1950 they were under investigation, and it was found that Georgia Tann had arranged thousands of adoptions under questionable means. Now, these questionable means are as follows. Georgia would arrange to take children born to inmates at mental institutions in Tennessee, as well as babies born to wards of the state. She would go to nursery schools and pose as a welfare agent assigned to remove a child from a single parent, and would then simply walk away with the child. Like, imagine dropping your child to preschool and then you come to collect them only to find out that the school has handed them over to a fucking so-called welfare agent. Like, obviously things are different now.
Now, but
like,
still...
Say, I work in childcare. Like, if someone new is coming to collect the child, the parents have to give us, their information. They have to bring a form of ID. We have a lot of places will ask for a password, so it'll be like, I don't know, Blue Dolphin or something.
I think that's so funny. Like, obviously it's such a good security measure, but a password to unlock your child.
Yeah, basically. It is so hot in this car right now.
It is ridiculous. At least the rain has chilled out. Hang on, I'm going to put this one down too.
My window is broken. This window, Bluetooth connected.
Successfully.
So
I don't know why it sounds like that.
Yeah. She would also take children from orphanages where their parents, for reasons such as illness or unemployment, had left them for temporary care.
To come back when they were
going to come back for them when they were able to. She would seek out unwed mothers at hospitals. This one really upset me. And she would bribe doctors and or nurses to tell the mother that their baby was unwell and had died after receiving medical care or had been stillborn.
Would be still alive and she'd take off with them.
She would then take the baby. Like, I saw one account.
That is fucking disgusting. So you're leaving someone there grieving the loss of a child they haven't even fucking lost, and they don't even know that child is out there living because you want a bit of fucking money.
Like, I think I saw one account, I believe it was a woman named Alma Sipple. No, it wasn't, sorry, it was someone else, but I know Alma Sipple. I know her first name was Alma, I think her surname was Sipple. Her daughter Irma was taken from her and adopted like this, and then...
In the same case, or like in different circumstances?
By Georgia Tann.
Okay.
and there was another account that I saw where the nurses or doctors or whatever had told the mother that their baby was stillborn, and she screamed and cried and roared and said, "But I heard him cry." And it just really, it broke my heart. And sometimes...
Yeah, how are you going to tell mothers that their child was stillborn when it came out screaming?
Yeah. Sometimes she would simply find a child on the street and offer them ice cream to lure them away. So she was stealing, she was kidnapping, she was just taking.
Yeah, like that one there is, like, it's all kidnap, but it's like, most of that is like fancy bribery kidnap. Yeah. That is literal, typical kidnap.
Yeah.
That's chitty chitty bang bang, getting my
van.
Yeah.
My van. Chitty chitty bang bang, get in my van.
But have you seen Chitty Chitty Bang Bang?
No.
Oh, I'll show you afterwards. There's like this weird dude that goes around because the king of the area doesn't like children, so it's like he goes up and gathers them all up, and like they're basically, yeah, it's weird. Okay. It's really old. Is it Dick Van Dyke, isn't it?
Yeah, Dick Van Dyke.
When he was like in his youth. Well, relative youth. Like.
Oh, okay, so it's an old movie.
Yeah, as in like he looks around the same age he probably was in the original Mary Poppins.
I love a bit of Mary Poppins. Now, I can't say that all of the children adopted out of Georgia Tann's service were stolen, as some women did give their children up legitimately.
I guarantee not as many as that were taken.
It seems that more often than not, it was less than legal. Most children were adopted fairly quickly, but those that weren't would spend their time in Georgia's home being neglected, physically abused, sexually abused, and even murdered. And there are reports...
Oh my God.
I did see as well that, like, at least 50 babies died in her care of dysentery.
Remind me what that is.
Dysentery, it's like I think...
It's a condition, isn't it? Like, it's a medical emergency.
I know, like, we'll say when we had, like... Dysentery is an infection of the intestines that causes diarrhea containing blood or mucus. Okay. And that's from the NHS UK. Like, I know when we used to do, like, the trocar boxes in school...
Yes!
A lot of African children will die of dysentery because they were drinking contaminated water.
Yeah.
So she clearly wasn't taking care of the children.
No.
Now, as well, there are reports that the children would be kept sedated right up until they were adopted.
Literal cash cows to her is all they were.
Memphis had the highest mortality rate in the entirety of the US in the 1930s, and a lot of this is attributed to Georgia Tann.
If you're contributing that highly to statistics, that says a lot.
Now, circling back to Camille Kelly, who was the family court judge I mentioned earlier.
Yes.
Georgia would tell her that the children came from homes where their parents could not adequately provide for them, and Camille would then push the adoptions through. Camille would also take custody of children of divorced or divorcing mothers under the guise of looking out for their best interests, and would place them in Georgia's care. Georgia would adopt them out to supposedly better homes, and Camille would sign off on abandonment papers so that Georgia could have custody to adopt them, making it seem much more above board than it actually was.
Yeah.
The ever-growing success of the society pleased Mayor Edward Crump, who Georgia would pay off in exchange for him protecting her from investigations, and he would also ignore complaints from families of the children that she had stolen.
And like, I'm on the fence about the judge, because the judge shouldn't have obviously been doing a lot of those things she was doing.
But she could have genuinely believed that it was...
she sounds like she was also in the mindset that she believed the stories of that she was doing the right thing and all that. Now, obviously, she shouldn't have cut corners and signed off on abandonment papers, expediting them and things like that. That shouldn't have been done. But I can see how if she was manipulated and believed that, not excusing what she did, of course, you should still be doing your job and doing it adequately and properly. But I can see how she could also, in a very minute way compared to everything else, be almost a victim, but also it's her own damn fucking stupidity.
So
as well.
I couldn't find anything to say that the judge was bribed, but I know she did bribe the mayor.
Yeah.
And he would also, on some occasions, help her to steal children.
No.
How was this man mayor?
Corruption. It's like we said about businesses.
Yeah. Pure and utter corruption. Politics is very corrupted.
Politics is fucking...
very corrupted. Like here, with the amount of landlords in the Dáil.
Politics is like a fungal infection that just won't go away. And
honestly,
it just spreads and spreads and spreads. And next thing you know, there's mushrooms growing.
Like, I remember I saw a statistic that there's like a certain percentage of the Dáil are... Why did I say it like that?
Yeah,
the Dáil are...
I was like...
The Dáil.
The Dáil?
The Dáil are landlords, and it's a high percentage.
Oh, it's a very high percentage. And the majority of them are Fianna Fáil, Fine Gael.
Yeah. Yeah.
Shocking. So shocked by that news.
So surprised. Now, it's reported that over 5,000 children were adopted out of the Tennessee Children's Home Society under Georgia Tann's rule. Now, some articles reference that as if she stole and sold 5,000 babies, but I think that figure does include legitimate adoptions as well.
Yeah, okay. But as we said, most of them probably weren't legit.
Yeah. Now, Georgia never cared who adopted the children as long as she got paid.
Yeah.
Some reports state that she adopted young teens to shady single men. Sent
children. Oh my God.
Yeah.
She basically
she
predators.
Adopted children to pedophiles.
Yeah.
She also...
It's like every time I think it can't get worse, it gets worse.
Yeah. She also sent children to abusive homes or places where they were used for child labour, such as farms, as well as some children being adopted by literal pedophiles.
How could you do that? How could you do any of it? But how could you extra specifically do that?
She clearly had no conscience.
She was shipping product as far as she was concerned.
She was a trafficker.
She was going around as a wholesaler trying to gather them all up and then sell them at the highest price.
Oh, but wait, there's more.
This bitch.
Yeah. Georgia was so desperate to have the children adopted that she would place ads in the paper. One example had the title, quote, "Want a real live Christmas present?"
No.
These are children. These are human beings.
And did it say on the ad what she was offering, like?
Yeah, she'd have pictures like, hang on now.
What I also want to know is why in the name of God did the newspaper actually run these?
I suppose it was.
And how, like, did she bribe? Like, that can't be seen as...
I don't know, apparently...
I don't know, that's very fucked up.
Maybe it's just a case
Want a real life Christmas present.
Advertising.
She wants she needs to be fucking euthanized, that's what she needed.
Look at this, look at this. This one, I'm waiting for it to load. Yours for the asking. The little boy. 3 children here, they'd like to be your Christmas gifts. I really don't think they fucking would.
Save one of them to send to me. Or I'll Google it later. But I'll add one just for context for you, the listeners. I'll add one to the Instagram post, which will also be the Facebook post.
Nancy, just 11 months old, needs a home. Can you say no? Like, yours for the asking. George wants to play catch, but he needs a daddy to complete team. And then it says underneath it, "Catch this ball, daddy. How would you like to have this handsome 5-year-old play...
Handsome 5-year-old.
Play catch with you? How would you like his chubby arms to slip around your neck and give you a bear-like hug? His name is George and he may be yours for the asking if you hurry along your request to the Christmas baby editor of the press Balmeter in cooperation with Miss Georgia Tann of the Tennessee Children's Home Society."
Like, a lot of the phrasing that actually sounds like an ad for a paedophile.
Yeah. Like,
she does not care. She never cared about who they went to.
No, she did not give a single fuck. She didn't vet a single family. So many of these children went on to have horrible lives.
And she thinks that she was taking them from
she thought
the
she was
breeding
God's
cattle,
gift.
like.
Thought she was God's gift. Thought she was doing the best thing ever for society as a whole.
Delusional.
So adoptions cost around $7 in Tennessee at the time. Now, I never actually did the thing of equating that in today's money.
What year was that?
So that would have been in, we'll say, the 1920s, 1930s.
1920s, 1930s. So I'll just put in 1930 for as an example, because I am curious.
I don't think there'd be much in the difference.
Yeah, I don't think so either.
And keep that open because I've got more figures coming at you.
Yeah, I will when my data starts working, because normally I've got 3G here, but at the moment... Oh, there we go. 1 second. Inflation. I typed in inflation calculator.
Calculator! That sound weird.
Calculator. So, okay. US dollars. So, how many dollars did you say?
7.
The website is loading. $7 in, let's say, 1930, I said I'd put in, didn't I?
To 2023.
1930 to 2023. $7. Calculate. That's still really cheap.
What is it?
If in 1930 I purchased an item for $7, then in 2023 that same item would cost $127.
Jesus Christ. Next figure. But in states like Mississippi, Arizona and Missouri, it was $750. That's a big price jump.
That's a big jump in the same years.
Yeah.
$750. That is big. Why the difference?
I don't know.
750. That is wild. 750. Calculate. That would be $13,624.09.
Last figure. So adoptions cost around $7 in Tennessee at the time, but in states like Mississippi, Arizona and Missouri it was $750. But for out-of-state private adoptions, which was Georgia's specialty, it could run you upwards of $5,000.
5,000 in 1930, in 2023, $90,827. So no wonder in certain areas she was doing it so cheap, because she was making all her money in these other
Well, these weren't
areas.
her prices, these were like set prices,
Oh,
I think.
like standard.
Yeah.
But then her specific pricing was the 5,000 kind of a vibe.
So as a result...
Makes sense, because she's a greedy cunt, so of course her choice one would be the 90,000 nowadays.
So as a result, Georgia was becoming a veritable millionaire, and it's reported that she would be chauffeured around town in a black
She should have been chauffeured off a bridge.
Limo, in her black stretch limo, because she's fancy.
Fancy a slap.
But by 1950, the state was closing in on her. There was a new governor cracking down on Mayor Crump and his wily ways. That's a direct quote. Now, I would personally say scumbag ways or corrupt ways, but whatever.
Proper crook, like.
Yeah. The investigation into the society was well and truly underway, but it was focusing on Georgia stealing money from state funds that were meant for the society, rather than how she stole children or how she acquired them before adoptions. I suppose this was probably an easier way for them to get her convicted.
Mm-hmm. And I suppose ultimately, unfortunately, some trials in some cases aren't about 100% getting justice.
Yeah.
But if getting 50% justice and putting them behind bars for as long as possible is the way to go, then unfortunately that is the route you have to take if the other way is not going to work.
Exactly. Now, Georgia Tann would actually die of uterine cancer a few days before the case against her was due to be announced, and the Shelby Co Chapter of the Tennessee Children's Home Society was closed a few months later. As we know, Georgia racked up millions of dollars during her time as a child and baby stealing bitch, running around tearing families apart willy-nilly, and this money was left to Anne Atwood.
Which was the one she had lived with in the Boston marriage, yeah.
So Atwood was 8 years younger than Georgia, but Georgia had adopted her, and this was apparently common practice for gay couples at this time, as it was a way to ensure that all assets would be left to their partner after their death.
Yes.
Now, it's unclear if Anne actually did inherit the money, as she had a legal case against her. I meant to look into that and I forgot. Now, Anne's son Jack had died in a plane crash, so he also didn't inherit the money. Now, it's possible that it went to her daughter June, but I honestly couldn't find a clear-cut answer.
So, where the fuck did the money go is what we need to figure out.
And just kind of jumping back to Anne, she was never officially employed by the society, but she did do some work for them as a secretary and would sometimes escort children to their adoptive homes. Her niece, Laurie Gabriel, has spoken publicly to say that she believes Anne was manipulated by Georgia.
Like a lot of people.
Yeah. Now, Anne passed away in 1995 and was secretary to the Boy Scouts, as well as part owner of a children's store. After her death, Georgia was buried in the Tann family plot in Hickory, Mississippi, and there is a marker in Elmwood Cemetery dedicated to the memory of the 19 children that we know for sure died under Georgia's care. Unfortunately, due to Tann's habit of destroying records, it was extremely difficult for people to find any information regarding their children or their parents, and it wasn't until 1995 that birth certs and adoption records were released. Several of Georgia Tann's victims have gone on to write books about their experiences, and there have also been a few movies made about the events. As Georgia Tann made herself look so legit, she was even able to dupe celebrities into adopting children from her, so I'll just mention a few of those people here. Now, it's very quick, 3 people, because I couldn't verify a lot of it. So Joan Crawford adopted 4 children, Christina in 1939, Christopher in 1943, and she adopted twins Kathy and Cindy in 1948. Now, the older 2 children were not adopted through Georgia Tann, but Kathy and Cindy were. Christina would go on to say that Joan was extremely abusive to her, and if you've ever seen the movie Mommy Dearest, you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, I've never seen the movie, but I've seen clips on TikTok and fucking hell.
And Christopher seconds his sister's statements, but the twins recall her as loving and caring and a mother who would do anything for her children. Kathy went on to be an actress, just like Joan, and was able to reconnect with her biological family in the 90s. Kathy passed away in 2020, while her twin sister Cindy Cindy passed away in 2007. And then Hollywood power couple June Allison and Dick Powell adopted their daughter Pamela through Georgia Tann in 1948. And as well, Richard Flair, who would go on to become well-known pro wrestler Ric Flair, only found out his birth name was Fred Phillips at the age of 70, as he had been adopted through the society.
Oh my God.
Now, he had his birth cert for years, but he said himself he had no interest in finding out about his biological family, because as far as he's concerned, the people who raised him are his family. They are his parents.
He had a happy upbringing.
And the only reason he even checked his birth cert was for a documentary that he was doing where they asked what his birth name was, and it was Fred Phillips. So there are a few others mentioned, but as I said, it was very difficult to verify them, so I chose to not include them. But if you are curious, you could easily find the information online. And this concludes the case of Georgia Tann and her black market child trafficking ring. What a despicable human being. I would hesitate to even call her a human being.
Monster. No, monster doesn't even do it for me.
Like, how do you, as a person, take children from families for no good reason other than your personal beliefs and opinions?
Yeah, but also, like, I'm also
and
wondering,
for your own personal gain.
Yeah, I'm also wondering, I'm like, with how much she did, and like her opinions on, like, you know, poor people being the cattle that make the children and the children go to the other people. Yeah, I'm like, if she really believed that the children would be better off with the rich people, why was she not making sure they were the good rich people? Do you know what I mean?
Well, I never saw anything to prove this. This is my personal belief. I would not be surprised if this woman was the queen of racists.
Yeah.
Because she's looking down on poor people. And as well, you have to think, like, America, would have it still been segregated in the 20s and 30s?
I'm not sure, to be honest, and I don't know.
I can't remember the timeline of, like, Martin Luther King and Rosa Parks and all that.
It's been a while since I've read up.
But as we know, even when segregation was over and done with, the racism still persists to this day. So I would not be surprised if she also looked down on black people just for their skin colour.
1900s to 1939.
Okay, so segregation would have still been going on at this time.
Yeah.
So I would not hesitate to believe that she also stole many children just out of being a racist bitch.
Yeah. That is ridiculous. But
So,
then again, I'd wonder, with racism, would she have even wanted them?
Yeah.
And I know that's a horrible thing to say, and it's nothing. It's not my opinion, but in her eyes,
they would not have been seen as valuable, I suppose.
It's disgusting.
It's honestly vile. Like,
but you know what? If that is how she thought, at least they kept them safe.
Yeah, that's true. That is true.
Well, not safe in a dangerous society, but I mean, safe from her.
They were going through enough without having to worry about their children being stolen from them. And many black families did have their children robbed from them. Like Emmett Till, he was 14, and that bitch came out on her deathbed and said she lied.
Yeah,
like,
I didn't know what you were on about until you said that last bit. Yeah.
Like, he apparently whistled at her, and she didn't like that. So she basically caused him to be lynched.
Yeah.
Which is a horrific way to die. And it was so common for black people to be lynched back then. And racism it baffles me. I cannot wrap my head around it.
Not only does it baffles me, but it boils my fucking blood.
It does. I'm the same. Like,
I'm
it makes
like,
me
there's
so angry.
many things. There's many things that I will bite my tongue over. I might not have in the past, but we've grown. But
racism is not one of those things.
Homophobia, anything that's like...
Anything that involves you treating someone
differently
less than
or
they deserve,
really badly,
or just being cruel to someone because of their race, their sexual orientation, their religion, their cultural beliefs,
just pisses me
whether
off.
they're a traveller.
I won't keep my mouth shut over
I
that.
got in so many fights as a kid.
Same.
So many fights as a kid over my traveller friends being mistreated. I mean, I also got in fights with the traveller kids sometimes, but that was just
but that's
bonding.
That's
that was us bonding.
That's just children fighting.
Yeah. But yeah, and like, I had no concept of racism until I remember Dad had one of those, like, do you know the rubber bands that had like end racism or stop racism on them or something, which, like, I don't think that's going to do much, but fair play to him. Fair play to him.
I'm assuming it was probably bought from a charity.
Yeah. And I remember, like, reading it and, like, sounding out the word and things, because I was quite young. I was 6 or 7, and asking him,
what is that?
I was like, what's racism, Dad? And he was like, oh, it's, you know, it's people not treating people
nicely because of
what they
where
look
they're
like,
from,
or
what
where
they
they're
look
from,
like.
or their skin color and
Yeah.
things. And I was like, that is stupid.
Yeah.
That is.
But
stupid.
it's like all those things that show that like children are not born hateful.
No, they're taught. It's a taught. It's something that's taught.
Which is why I suppose in some areas it's so much more common, because some areas are literally full of racists.
But even in town, like, I've seen how some of the traveller girls have been treated. And, like, fair enough, some of them are bitches. But it's the nice ones that are mistreated.
Yeah.
Like, one in particular, we both know, we both adore her. Like, that woman has been just bullied and picked on, and she has never deserved it, because she's so sweet and she's so kind.
But you know
and
what?
so
The thing
thoughtful.
is, I don't even think, like, do you know how, like, even if someone isn't, like, a really nice person and stuff like that, it's
Yeah,
like,
I don't think
unless you're defending yourself or something like that, if
Yeah.
you've got nothing nice to say, don't fucking say it.
Yeah, it's like my Insta bio. If you can't be kind, be quiet.
Yeah.
So
Like,
yeah.
it's obviously different if someone, like, attacks you or verbally attacks you and you feel like you need to stand your ground or stand up for yourself. That is different.
And, like, you know what like, really, like, touched me was during the Black Lives Matter protests after George Floyd was murdered.
Yeah. And the first, not the first. And
No,
not,
and probably
not the
won't
last,
be
which
the
is
last
actually the
either.
worst. There's probably been more since then.
But it was during the riots and the protests when the cops were starting to get a bit brutal, and there was loads of videos of white people standing in front of black people,
Yeah.
and, like,
It's just also tragic that had to be done.
yeah, like, we as a society based on skin colour should not have to stand in front of another human being because we know that we are less likely to be shot.
Yeah.
So yeah.
That's
there's
that.
our views on racism.
Yeah. Basically, don't fucking do it.
yeah.
And if you are someone who does it, check your fucking self.
Check yourself before I wreck you. Yeah, so we've gone a little bit over what how long
fine.
the episode should have been, but you know what? It was an
We're
important
aiming
topic.
for 45 to 50 minutes, and we're going to be on like 52 and a half,
Yeah,
so it's
but
fine.
look, it was an important topic. I think it needed to be discussed.
Yes.
If you're a racist, don't listen to our podcast.
If you're a racist, never mind, I'm not going to finish that sentence.
Don't. I know what you were going to say.
Yeah.
Don't.
But anyway, yes, so thanks for
um,
listening, guys.
Thanks for listening. Always be kind. Never mistreat anyone unless they, like, are evil and deserve it. But even then, be careful.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Okay, so, right, with that, we bid you adieu, and we will chew your ears off again next week.
Yes.
Ciao.
Bye.